Well, hello friends, I'm David Vos. It's really good to see everybody today. Well, it is a cold one in Texas, I guarantee it. It is so cold here. Hitchhikers were showing pictures of their thumbs from their phone. It's so cold around here in Texas that the cows outside threatened to strike. It is so cold that the politicians got their hands in their own pockets. Yeah, it is so cold. Someone spilled hot coffee on me yesterday, and I actually thanked them. That's right. It is so cold. It really is. There's a group of chickens that walked into the KFC, and they asked to warm up. That's how cold it is. Yes, it is cold. It's so cold that even the good humor man is in a bad mood. It's so cold we can't even get into a heated argument with somebody. It's so doggone cold the pickpockets are calling in sick. It's so cold Richard Simmons is actually wearing pants. That's how dadgum cold it is here in Texas, friends. And practically the whole dadgum United States of America, from what I'm told. That Arctic cold front has just moved on down, and it's going to be here for what they say, something like 10 days or 12 days. So buckle up, friends, and get you a fire started. Make sure the heat's on. Even if you're not at home, leave the heat on, because your pipes will freeze if you don't. So, just a little warning there. Well, friends, this cold weather is very, very demonstrative of how our society is completely nuts. Alright, all we got is wall-to-wall coverage of how cold it is, how the world is going to come to an end. It's never been so cold in, 20 years, 30 years? They say it broke a record. Guess what? Records are broken every year. Every year since the time that Adam walked out of the garden, there's been a record broke. Because there's 360 days in a year. And every year is something different. So if we start off at the first day of the year, and let's say it was 20 degrees. And next year, on the first day of the year, let's say it was 15. Oh, record broke. But we find out that on average, it's going to be 12. But some days it's going to be 20. Some days it's going to be 9. Ever so often it's going to be 8. But then a few years later it's going to be 12 again. Or 15. It's just a cycle. Okay. When it gets to the point where the weather has dropped down to a degree that we've never seen before, that would freeze a gnat's butt on an elk's behind, then you come and you let me know. Because you see, it cannot be getting hotter in this world. Or colder, either one. They say there's global warming. Now, let me prove to you that there is not global warming. Some years ago, I was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it was 115 degrees. I guarantee you could not have stood another 5 degrees warmer. It could not have happened. And that was an average day. You see, here's the thing. In the middle of summer, that's pretty much a norm. It gets up into the hundreds and 110, and ever so often it'll reach up in there where if it got any worse than that, you'd all die. The only reason it was actually 115 there is because there's about a 30-mile stretch of nothing but cement and asphalt. And of course, the sun in that area is bouncing off the asphalt and causing the mercury to rise to 115. Everywhere around that city, outside of the asphalt, was probably only about 112, which was average normal in the middle of July or August. The problem is that we're getting temperatures from cities that are a little bit warmer because of the growing asphalt cement. But if you go to the North Pole or the South Pole, it's still the same temperatures that it has been for thousands of years. And they say, well, the ice is melting at the poles, and they don't tell you that this happens every so often in cycles. And what happens is the North Pole is on an axis, and we're moving slightly. So over some hundreds of years, it moves. The North Pole actually moves. And so where the ice used to be out there in the water, where it was all full of ice, is now moved over into Russia. And now England and Russia is having a cold snap that's going to last for some years. They're in a deep freeze. And there are times when our globe goes through a very cold season they call little ice ages. And then it warms up. There have been times in the history of mankind that the water levels, the ocean levels, have risen over the coastlands and would, if they were at that level today, would inundate all of the cities in the world. Singapore and Hong Kong and New York and New Orleans and Los Angeles, all of that would be underwater if the water rose to where it has been in past history. And it will, because it goes in cycles. But the fact that you've got stone-faced reporters standing there looking you in the eye, reading a script telling you that it is the end of the world because it got 20 degrees in Texas and a skip of snow on the ground in a place where they rarely get snow, that happens every so often in certain places. It's just something that happens. I remember when I was a little boy, lived up in Idaho. Now up there, the porch was about 5 feet off the ground. The reason they had 5-foot porches is because in the wintertime, you walked out your door and you didn't even know there was a porch. You walked right straight to your car because the snow was always usually over 5 feet. But sometimes it would go like 6, 7, 8 feet of snow. And there would be drifts of 10, 12, 15 feet of snow. And this was an every year occurrence. I remember one time my brother said, "Come on, Dave," and he took me with a shovel, and we went out in the back pasture, and we just was walking as if we were walking on the ground. We started digging with a shovel, and we went 10 feet down and built a snow fort. That's how deep it was. And in that part of the woods, if you parked your car somewhere around end of September or November, and you didn't go and shovel it out and move it about once a day, you're going to lose that car. You'll not see that car till spring. Because the snow will come in one night and it'll be gone. There's no way to get that car out of there. That's right. In those parts of the woods, you have to shovel your walk. Because if you do not shovel your walk, it will be leading you right up to the roof. And I remember about the time of the Mount St. Helens blew. That big volcano in Washington. And at the time I was living in Idaho, we got ash all over the ground, about a quarter of an inch or half an inch of ash. I remember I got a little vial and saved it, but I somehow lost it since then. Well, since that time, right after that in Idaho, we didn't get any snow the next year. Zilch. We didn't get any snow. All right, now remember, in Idaho, it's common to get 4, 5, 6, 7 feet of snow. Up to that point. Next year, we didn't get nothing. We didn't get no snow for 2, 3, 4 years. And then we started getting snow intermittently. Years later, we were just getting 2, 3 feet of snow and then it would all melt off next day. And then we'd have floods. And this went on for years. I hear that it's getting a little better up there now. They're starting to get more snow again. You see, it goes in cycles. And I am not even a university PhD educated snow scientist. And yet I know from my own common sense, just going back in time, living life, I know that we are not having a crisis and it is not the end of the world. All of this is political, friends. Imagine this. You go down to your local city, wherever it may be, and you look and you see all these people, millions of people in this huge city. Asphalt, cement, smoke pipes, factories. You say, wow, we surely are ruining the earth. Pollution's got to be, it's terrible. We must be killing the earth. But I want you to stop and think about it. All of these big cities that we're talking about, they all live in the zone of the earth that is livable. We all live in this area around the earth that is basically comfortable to live. Most of the huge cities live in the northern hemisphere, in that area between the equator and, say, the 45th parallel, somewhere around in there. Okay, that leaves the entire southern hemisphere of the earth without any large cities to speak of. Very few. And that leaves everything north of the 50th, 45th parallel without any large cities. Not only that, the area where we do have the cities are only intermittent. In other words, along the East Coast, a little bit in Europe, over there in Japan and China. Now, those are a lot of cities, granted. A sphere, as it goes out towards the radius grows exponential. So that, and remember, the atmosphere goes thousands of feet, miles into the air, up into the ozone layer. So this little bitty city spouting some smoke down there on the ground is not going to be able to cover and fill up all of the air around the earth. It's a lot larger than you have been told. The amount of atmosphere, it goes miles into the air. There is all of the tropical, we have millions and millions of acres of forest in Canada and Russia. There are no cities and towns, and all of those pine trees are creating oxygen. I know you've heard that they're cutting all the trees in the world, and that's not really true. It never really was true, although yes, they were cutting a lot of the trees. But remember, trees grow back in just a few years. And even if the whole tree doesn't grow back, within 5 years, bushes and small trees are already growing. So it's not as if they cut everything down to the dirt so that there's nothing growing. Everywhere in the world, we've got plant life. And the plants, that's their job. They go and they make oxygen. And it goes up into the sky and creates an ozone layer. And that's the job of the ozone layer. They were telling us for years that we were losing the ozone layer. And a lot of that was false. It was not true. Yes, it is true that back in the 60s, there were some problems with pollution, say in Los Angeles and places in China. I remember as a kid when you'd go to Los Angeles, you could not see the mountains. Maybe a mile away, you couldn't see the Hollywood sign. It was so much smog. Well, if you go to Los Angeles today, you can see pretty well. You can see the Hollywood sign, you can see the mountains in the distance, and they've cleaned it up pretty good. But that smog that existed in the 60s was only a local problem. And beyond a few thousand feet in the air, it was gone. There wasn't any smog. It was mostly a local problem. Now, I understand a lot of you are saying, well, I don't know if that's true, and even if it isn't, we shouldn't be polluting the earth. Yes, that's true. We shouldn't pollute the earth. However, you have to remember, every time you start a fire, you're creating pollution. What is pollution? Pollution is burning of fossil fuel. What is that? Well, when plant life dies, it creates a mulch, and the mulch rots and it ferments and it makes gasoline, and it seeps into the earth and creates an oil. That's natural substance. When that is burned, it doesn't hurt things. Remember, when a volcano goes off, the one we talked about on Mount St. Helens, what do you suppose made it go off? What do you suppose caused the eruption? Beneath the volcano, there's fire. There's molten lava. And why is there molten lava? Because of the oil and the gasoline and the pockets of gas under the earth that get to burning and make things hot, and they heat up the rocks, and then the molten lava comes out, and ash and gas and sulfur is spewed into the air, and it's way worse than anything we can do by burning fuel in cars. We've got to let people understand that burning gas is not some crazy, unnatural thing that's never happened before. In fact, thousands of years ago, there were a lot more volcanoes going off at periods of time in our history. In ancient times, way back. And it was actually good for the environment. Because in those days, they say it was more like a jungle. The atmosphere was lush and green and all of these. You see, you get this warming effect, and it actually helps the earth. And scientists today are actually telling people this is probably what's actually happening. It's actually a good thing when the earth warms up a little bit and we burn some of this fuel. Because you see, it's a cyclical thing. As you burn the fuel, you create nitrogen, and you need sulfur and nitrogen in the air because that falls onto the ground and it makes fertilizer. Yeah, remember that ash? At first, the ash may be too much when it lands like a half an inch of ash, and it could be, detrimental for a little while. But in reality, inside that ash, there are nutrients that Mother Nature wants to be on the soil, to put back into the soil. Sulfur, nitrogen, and all kinds of other phosphates and so forth that needs to go into the soil, friends. So all of this hogwash that we're destroying the earth by burning fossil fuels is a complete and total lie. Don't believe them, friends. Now, yes, we should do something about pouring poisons into the rivers. But even there, whenever there's a poison, if that is some sort of chemical or something natural to our earth, it's going to be cleansed by the river. If you go down a mile, all of that water runs through the sand and the gravel and the rocks. It purifies itself. Now, in areas such as lowlands, like in Louisiana and Mississippi and stuff, you notice that the water is quite dirty. That's because there's marshy areas where the water can't cleanse itself as well. And it's very important that factories and people don't pollute those areas. But even in those places, the water does replenish itself and cleanse itself over time. When the rains come down and the floods come, everything gets cleaned up. Mother Nature is a beautiful, beautiful thing. She knows how to cleanse. She knows how to keep herself going and to purge herself of all kinds of poisons and toxins. And there really isn't anything human beings can do to destroy this huge, gigantic, monstrous earth that we live on, that knows how to take care of itself. There isn't anything that you can burn. It's like saying some people went out into the forest and chopped a tree down and made a fire. And some environmentalists come along and say, hey, you just chopped a tree down. That's against Mother Nature, and you're destroying the earth, and now you're polluting it by burning the tree. Do you see how ridiculous that is? Because you see, mankind was designed for that very thing, to chop down that tree and build a house and take the part that he doesn't use and build a fire to keep warm. And, you know, another example of this is the panic that you see on people's faces. Like recently here in California, when they get a fire. I heard that there were some fires down around Santa Barbara and Ventura County and so forth. They were just panicked and scared out of their minds because, oh my goodness, there was a fire. The largest fire they've ever had in 40 years or something, right? No, it's not true. It's not true. I guarantee there have been forest fires in California ever since the little bears learned how to eat berries. I guarantee that thousands and thousands of acres have always burned, and probably more in the past than today. Because in today's world, we've got these doggone firefighters running around trying to put the fire out, when Mother Nature doesn't want the fire out. Do you realize that a pine tree cannot even grow unless there is a forest fire? That's how the pine cones open up and release the seeds. It is a mandatory thing that we must have forest fires. Like I said, it also puts all that wood and greenery and burns it, makes an ash, and creates nutrients and fertilizer for the soil as well. But it also clears out the old growth and allows for new growth to come. And that is what nature does. The problem is not that something's going crazy wrong with the world. The problem is you've got a lot of people today that are rich and they want to build their big, luxurious homes right there on the bank of a hill that is unstable. And when the rains come, the mudslide takes their house out and they want to complain. Or they want to build their luxurious home back to back with all of the other people in this one little neighborhood. And then when, God forbid, a fire comes through, they demand that everybody in the world panic and go and save their house. You see, it's something that happens. It happened in the days of Daniel Boone. That's right. He built a cabin and his cabin burned down one year. It happened. You ever see these old Western movies? It's going to happen till the end of time. But the world's not coming to an end, friends. And I just thought I'd let you know that we're going to be all right. Now, I know that a lot of you, because this same thing applies to our politics. And a lot of you are thinking that, well, the way things are going these days, we're all going to die and Armageddon's coming and it's going to be the end of the world soon. And I'm here to tell you, friends, that is not true. The world is never going to end. Jesus Christ said that the night is far spent and the day is at hand. And the dawning of the day star shall rise in your hearts. And God's kingdom shall reign. For truth keeps marching on. Things are not getting worse, my friends. You see the riots in the streets? It's not getting worse. That's all propaganda created by these billionaires. They're hiring people to go out and picket and break out some windows. All right, it costs the taxpayer a few thousands, maybe a few millions of dollars here and there, but that's self-destruction. The world's not coming to an end. In spite of what they've told you, there's not more wars today. There's not more people starving. There's less people starving. There's less people that are dying of disease. We're actually getting better. And politics, even though right now it seems like it's unhinged, it's actually getting better. Because now they're being exposed. And these cockroaches are going to get stepped on. And the swamp is going to be drained. And of course it's not going to be completely drained. If our world in 5 years is 50% better, are we all going to complain that it's not perfect? No. There's always going to be things that are bad in the world because human beings are human. We make mistakes, and there's greed, and there's this, and there's that. And it's going to be a slow process, but we're getting better, and truth is marching on. Women's rights, we've got them. Women can go out and get a job and make good money, really comparable to what men make. There's a debate as to whether or not they're making less money or whether or not they're just taking leave when they have pregnancies and they're not willing to do certain jobs or something, because there is a difference in biology, friends. But it is illegal in our day and age to purchase and buy someone as a slave. Yes, there is a problem going on right now in Libya, and there are human people that are being abused over there. This is also something that's man-made, caused by our own CIA and perhaps the KGB and whoever else is involved. But I guarantee that it's being exposed, and one terrible thing after another is going to be exposed, and eventually we're going to continue to grow, and eventually things are going to get better. More people have food, more people have homes to live in, more people are pursuing their goals than ever before. There's still some fraud that we've got to take down, friends. We've got to make everyone understand that in our country and basically all around the world, the one big thing that we've got to fix, if we can, and we will, is we've got to stop these corporations from lying and pillaging and destroying us and putting us, and lobbying our Congresses and our legislatures and making more and more laws to completely enslave us. But we're going to make progress on that as well, friends. However, there's one thing you may have overlooked. In spite of the fact that there are more laws and more corruption, and the cities are getting worse in the inner cities and people are on drugs, and that part of it's bad, you don't have to participate. Our healthcare system is in shambles. Yes, it costs way too much and nobody's covered. I understand. Here's a way around that. Knowledge, friends. If you eat right, you will be healthy and you won't need to go to the doctor. In fact, the best thing to do is really to live outside of the system as much as you can and expose the governments that we have as much as you can until it's gone. But I would suggest that we all go out and get ourselves a little bit of land, grow our own food, and milk our own cows, and have our own eggs, and live in peace and happiness, and have harmony in our lives. And we can do this. All we've got to do is be determined that we're going to be happy and believe in our own potential. So I'm going to go ahead and go, friends. I hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's. This is David Vos, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good one.